dance this waltz, marry my son.
Laughter cracked through the air like a whip as crystal chandeliers bathed the ballroom in golden light. The Devereux Gala had begun, and every inch of the mansion gleamed with wealth. Violins swelled as men in tailored suits and women in shimmering gowns floated across polished marble floors. In the middle of it all, Amina balanced a silver tray of champagne flutes, head slightly bowed, moving quietly between clusters of whispering elites. She kept her eyes down, but their words sliced through the music. Look at her posture, too graceful for a maid. Maybe she practiced for the guests. Laughter followed like perfume, light but sharp. Then, snap. Mrs. Devereux's perfectly manicured fingers cut through the crowd. "You there, girl!" Every head turned. Amina froze mid-step. Her heartbeat thudded against her ribs as dozens of eyes pinned her in place. She lowered the tray to a passing waiter and stepped forward. "Yes, ma'am," she murmured, her voice steady, though her palms trembled. Mrs. Devereux stood at the top of the staircase, a queen surveying her court. She wore a black silk gown that gleamed under the chandelier, her chin tilted high. Beside her was Sebastian, tall, handsome, and smirking, like a prince who never heard the word no. "This is the night of our annual gala," Mrs. Devereux announced to the room, her voice amplified by confidence alone. "And tonight we shall add a little entertainment." The orchestra softened. Guests leaned forward, curious. "As you all know," she continued, resting a hand on Sebastian's arm, "my son is a remarkable dancer, a waltz champion. But can anyone here keep up with him?" Murmurs rippled through the ballroom. Amina stepped back, hoping to disappear into the line of maids. Mrs. Devereux's eyes slid across the room like a predator searching for prey, then stopped on Amina. Her lips curved into a smile that wasn't kind. "You!" Laughter broke out instantly. The spotlight shifted. The hum of conversation became a storm of whispers. Amina's stomach dropped. "Come closer, dear," Mrs. Devereux cooed, the mock sweetness scraping like sandpaper. "Don't be shy," she obeyed, taking slow steps forward, every inch of the ballroom floor echoing under her shoes. Her maid's uniform looked painfully plain under the chandelier, surrounded by sequins and diamonds. Sebastian raised a brow, amused. "Mother, are you serious?" he whispered. She didn't answer. "Tonight," Mrs. Devereux declared, "we will host a waltz challenge. Anyone who can impress my son with their dancing will receive a special prize." Excited gasps followed. The idea of a spectacle thrilled them. "Pick her," a man called from the crowd. "Let's see the maid dance." "Does she even know what a waltz is?" Another woman laughed. Mrs. Devereux tilted her head. "Yes, let's see if our staff has hidden talents." Amina's breath caught. Her fingers curled at her sides. For a split second, a flash of memory burned behind her eyes. Bright lights, polished floors, the thrill of movement. Her father's hand tightening around hers before a competition. "Dance like you belong." She hadn't stepped onto a dance floor since that night. I can't," she whispered, shaking her head. "Oh, come now," Mrs. Devereux interrupted, her voice dripping with performative shock. "Don't tell me you're shy," the guests chanted now, voices rising like a wave. "Dance! Dance! Dance!" Amina looked around, faces blurred, but every smirk felt like a blade. Her throat tightened. She wanted to run, but her feet stayed anchored. Sebastian walked down the steps lazily, like a predator circling. He stopped in front of her, leaning close enough for her to catch the scent of expensive cologne. "This should be fun," he murmured. Her heart hammered. Heat rose to her cheeks, not from shyness, but something deeper, buried pride, humiliation pressing against old strength. Mrs. Devereux descended slowly, each step echoing like a countdown. She stopped right in front of Amina, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. "Here's the game," she said softly, loud enough for everyone to hear. If you can dance this waltz with my son—" She paused, savoring the suspense. "You'll marry him!" The room exploded. Gasps, laughter, clinking glasses. Some clapped as if watching a circus act. Amina's breath caught in her chest. The walls seemed to close in. The music faded into a ringing silence. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. Mrs. Devereux tilted her head, smiling like a cat watching a trapped bird. "Well, dear, will you accept?" The crowd leaned in, waiting. Chanting began again, louder this time. "Dance! Dance! Dance!" Amina's eyes locked on the gleaming floor. A storm raged behind her calm face. Fear, shame, something fierce struggling to rise. Her hands trembled, but her spine stayed straight. She didn't move. Not yet. And as the chant echoed through the ballroom, Mrs. Devereux's smile widened, knowing she had cornered her prey. She used to be someone. The whisper sliced through the laughter like a sharp blade. An older guest leaned toward her companion, eyes narrowing on Amina's trembling figure in the spotlight. "I've seen that face before. Years ago. She was a dancer." The words hung in the air, stirring something deeper than gossip. Behind her lowered lashes, Amina's chest tightened. She wasn't just a maid once. She was his daughter, a girl who flew across polished floors like she belonged to the music. Memory pulled her under like a tide. She was 14 again, the lights of the community dance hall glowing like stars. Her father's hands rested on her shoulders, warm and steady. "You're ready," he whispered, eyes shining with pride. He had worked double shifts at the mechanic shop to buy her those dance shoes. "Tonight, they'll see what I already know." The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. "Next up, junior finalist Amina Clark." Cheers. Applause. She stepped forward, heart light, feet moving with rhythm that felt like breathing. Every spin made her father clap louder from the front row. She won that night. A week later, she was preparing for the state finals. Her father drove her in their old blue sedan, music playing softly as rain tapped the windshield. She had her costume in a plastic bag and her shoes tied neatly in her lap. Then, headlights. A horn. Metal shrieked. The memory cracked like glass. Screech. Impact. Darkness. She woke up in the hospital with a fractured arm. Her father never woke up at all. The day of his funeral, she folded her dance costume and placed it in a box. She never opened it again. Instead, she applied for a maid's position at the Devereux mansion to keep food on the table for her younger siblings. Dancing became a ghost that lived behind closed doors. The present snapped back like a rubber band. The ballroom crowd had moved on, laughter now swirling elsewhere. But the echo of that whisper remained. In the kitchen that night, the atmosphere was thick with chatter. Pots clattered, steam hissed, and gossip flowed like wine. "You're not really thinking of doing it, are you?" Clara, a sharp-tongued maid with a permanent smirk, leaned against the counter. "They'll eat you alive out there. You'll trip, they'll laugh, and you'll lose your job." Across from her, gentle-faced Maria shook her head. "She's not like the rest of us." I saw the way she stood when Mrs. Devereux called her. Shoulders back, like a dancer, Clara scoffed. "Dancer? Please, that was years ago, maybe. She scrubs floors now." "Some things don't die," Maria replied softly, eyes meeting Amina's. Amina stayed silent, peeling potatoes at the far counter, the rhythmic scrape against the skin echoing like a metronome. Her mind was a storm. "Ignore them," Clara said, lowering her voice. "Don't let those people turn you into their clown. If you step on that floor, they'll never let you forget it." Maria took a step closer. "Or they'll finally see you." Two paths stood before her, both terrifying. One was quiet, safe, invisible. The other was filled with old pain and new risk. That night, long after the kitchen had gone silent and the guests had drifted home, Amina returned to the ballroom. It was empty now. The chandeliers were dimmed. The floor gleamed like still water. She stood in the center, barefoot, heart pounding. She took one step, then another. The first turn was clumsy, her muscles stiff from years of stillness. She almost stopped, but then, somewhere deep in her bones, the door to the Devereux study clicked shut, sealing the sound of the ballroom behind heavy oak. A fire crackled in the marble hearth, painting golden light across Mrs. Devereux's sharp features. Sebastian lounged in a leather chair, swirling a glass of wine like he didn't care. Mrs. Devereux leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Embarrass her. Make it unforgettable, Sebastian frowned. Mother, she's just a maid. Isn't the invitation itself humiliating enough? No, she said, voice low and deliberate. People will expect a performance. You will give them one. Lead her in circles. Make her stumble. Make them laugh. That's the show, he hesitated. And if she surprises us? She won't, she snapped. Do what I say. He leaned back, smirk returning. Fine, I'll play along. But don't expect me to enjoy dancing with the help. Mrs. Devereux's lips curved into a razor-thin smile. Good boy. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the kitchen windows, painting the room in soft gold. The hum of pots and footsteps filled the space as Amina washed dishes quietly, her mind elsewhere, on Sebastian's unexpected words the night before. You can actually dance. Maria, the head maid, approached with a folded towel in hand. Her face was kind but firm. I saw you, she said softly. Amina froze. Saw me what? Dancing. Amina's heart skipped. I was just... You don't have to explain. Maria's eyes softened. I saw you dance years ago before you worked here. At the community showcase. You were extraordinary, Amina stared at her, stunned. You remember that? I never forget talent. Maria glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Listen to me. If you decide to do this, hold your head high. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. Before Amina could reply, the kitchen door swung open. Sebastian strolled in like he owned the air, hands in his pockets, eyes glinting with mischief. Well, well, he drawled, leaning against the counter. Practicing for your big debut? Amina kept scrubbing, not looking at him. I was working. He stepped closer. You really think you can keep up with me on that floor? His tone was teasing, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. She finally turned to face him, calm and steady. I don't need to keep up, she said softly. I just need to dance. For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise. Then he laughed. We'll see about that. Rehearsals began 2 days later. The ballroom transformed into their stage. Polished floor, soaring ceiling, the faint scent of roses from the vases lining the walls. The orchestra wasn't there, but the grand piano played softly as Sebastian and Amina faced each other in the center. Follow me, he said, holding out his hand with a mock bow. She placed her hand in his. The moment their palms touched, his grip tightened slightly. Not painful, but controlling. The music began. He led her in the classic waltz pattern, smooth at first, then abruptly switched steps mid-turn. She stumbled, catching herself just in time. His smirk widened. Too slow, he whispered. They tried again. This time he spun faster than expected, pulling her off balance. She didn't fall. She adjusted. He leaned closer. You'll have to do better than that. Day after day, the rehearsals continued. He pushed harder, changing tempo without warning, cutting into her space, belittling her under his breath. Clumsy. Heavy. This isn't a mop you're holding. Each jab cut deep, but she refused to give him the reaction he wanted. She breathed through it, let her body remember what her pride wouldn't allow her to say. She was a dancer. After each rehearsal, long after Sebastian and the others left, Amina returned alone. Barefoot, in silence, she repeated every pattern he'd twisted. Her feet ached. Sweat dampened her blouse. But each night, her turns grew sharper. Her posture straightened. The rhythm that once slept inside her began to roar awake. In the dim ballroom light, her movements became fluid again, rust giving way to steel. Sebastian noticed. He wouldn't admit it, but during their sessions, her responses grew cleaner, faster. He'd change a step. She'd adapt. He'd try to corner her. She'd glide out effortlessly. The game he thought he controlled started to shift. She didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply matched him, step by step, with quiet defiance. One late night, long after midnight, Amina practiced alone once more. The ballroom was bathed in silvery moonlight, shadows stretching across the floor like spectators. She moved with precision, every spin punctuated by breath, every turn a quiet rebellion. She didn't notice Mrs. Devereux at the top of the staircase, wrapped in a silk robe, watching through the shadows. At first, the matriarch's face held amusement, expecting to see awkward fumbling. But as Amina executed a flawless reverse turn, then transitioned into a clean, natural spin, Mrs. Devereux's smile faltered. Her eyes narrowed. This wasn't the trembling maid she'd chosen to humiliate. This was something else, something dangerous. She gripped the railing, the firelight flickering behind her. This, she whispered to herself, a chill creeping into her voice. This could backfire. The morning of the final rehearsal dawned crisp and golden. The ballroom glittered with preparations for the gala's preview performance, a full run-through in front of select guests, staff, and Sebastian's circle of fashionable friends. Downstairs, Amina stood in front of the cracked mirror of the servants' quarters, heart thudding. Maria tightened the last hook of a modest pale blue gown borrowed from an old costume trunk. It wasn't extravagant, but on Amina it transformed. The soft fabric framed her shoulders elegantly. The skirt whispered against the floor like silk. When she stepped into the ballroom, a hush fell over the staff. Even the gossipy kitchen girls stared. "She looks like," one maid whispered, "like she belongs," another finished. But not everyone admired. Behind the velvet curtains, Sebastian's friends, three bored young socialites in tailored suits and glittering gowns, exchanged sly looks. "She's really going to dance in that?" One girl sneered. "She actually thinks she has a chance," a young man chuckled. "Sebastian will crush her." "But let's make sure she remembers her place," said another, producing a tiny pair of scissors from her clutch. They crept to the dressing area while Amina reviewed steps with Maria. Quick, practiced snips to the back seams, just enough to hold for a few spins, then tear. A laugh was stifled behind manicured hands. The rehearsal began. The piano struck its first elegant chord, echoing through the vaulted ceiling. Amina and Sebastian took their positions. Sebastian glanced at her. For the first time, something in his smirk faltered. She looked radiant, almost regal. Nothing like the maid he'd mocked in the kitchen. "Ready?" he murmured. "Always," she said, steady. They moved. Step, turn, glide. The music swelled. For a few breathtaking moments, the ballroom seemed to dissolve around them. Amina's footwork was crisp. Her spins had regained their youthful precision. Even Sebastian's friends exchanged uneasy glances. Then came the spin. The one they'd rehearsed dozens of times. The pivot that would sweep her, skirt out like a wave. She turned, rip. Fabric split audibly down the back. Seam. Gasps. Amina's eyes widened as the skirt caught beneath her heel. She stumbled mid-turn, arms flailing to recover. The watching guests burst into cruel laughter. "Oh no, look! Should have stuck to cleaning floors!" And worst of all, Sebastian laughed too. Not cruelly at first, more from shock, but the sound echoed through the ballroom like a dagger. Amina froze, cheeks burning hot. Every instinct screamed to run, and before anyone could stop her, she lifted the torn fabric and fled through the side doors into the garden. Outside, the night air hit her like a slap. She ran through the manicured hedges, past the stone fountain, until she found a quiet bench beneath a rose arbor. The sobs came hard, unfiltered, years of swallowed pride spilling out at once. She pressed her hands to her face. I was a fool. I thought I could stand with them, but I'm just their joke. Footsteps approached softly. Maria, the older woman, knelt beside her, hands warm on Amina's trembling ones. "Child," she said gently, "look at me." Amina shook her head. They were all laughing. Even him. Maria's voice sharpened, cutting through Amina's shame. "Do you know why they laughed?" "Because they're afraid." Amina blinked through tears. "Afraid?" Maria's eyes burned with conviction. "They fear what they can't control. For a moment, when you danced out there, you weren't a maid. You were something they couldn't define, couldn't own. So they tore your gown. They wanted to remind you of your place." Her grip tightened. "But your place is not where they decide. It's where you choose to stand." Amina inhaled shakily. The rose-scented air filled her lungs. Maria's words rooted themselves inside her chest like iron. A shadow fell over the garden path. Sebastian. His usual cocky posture was gone. He lingered awkwardly a few steps away. Her heart skipped at the honesty in his tone. There was no cruelty now, just conflict. "Why?" she asked. "Because that's what's expected of me." The garden fell silent except for the distant murmur of ballroom music. Two people stood beneath the roses, no longer maid and heir, but rivals, both unsure what would happen next. His eyes met hers, steady. "Don't hold back," he said finally, and then he turned, disappearing into the shadows, leaving Amina standing beneath the stars, heart pounding, not with humiliation this time, but with something far fiercer. The chandeliers blazed like constellations above the Devereux ballroom, their golden light spilling over polished marble floors and glittering gowns. The annual gala had reached its peak. Champagne glasses clinked, the orchestra tuned their instruments, and a thick air of expectation hung over the crowd. Mrs. Devereux rose from her gilded chair at the head of the room, lifting a jeweled hand for silence. The chatter faded into a hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," she declared, her voice smooth as silk and twice as sharp, "the moment you've all been waiting for, the Waltz Challenge." Laughter rippled through the elite like a wave. All eyes turned toward the far corner of the room, where Amina stood in a simple but beautifully mended gown. Maria had worked tirelessly to repair it. It wasn't flawless, but it held. Amina's hands trembled slightly at her sides, but her chin was lifted. This time, she wasn't being dragged into the spotlight. She walked into it. Spotlights followed her as she crossed the floor. The orchestra gave a soft, expectant trill. Mrs. Devereux's lips curled. "Our dear Sebastian will lead," she announced theatrically. "And if our little maid can keep up—" "Well, we shall see," murmurs of amusement. Some guests leaned forward, eager for humiliation. Others, remembering her stumble at rehearsal, smirked knowingly. Sebastian appeared from the opposite end, every inch the golden air. Tailored suit, effortless confidence, a faint smirk dancing on his lips. But beneath the mask, a flicker of something else stirred. He remembered the way she'd looked under the garden roses. They met at the center. He extended his hand. She placed hers in his. Firm. No hesitation. The first notes struck. A grand classical waltz that filled the room like a living force. Sebastian stepped forward sharply, leading with flashy, exaggerated movements meant to throw her off balance. Amina followed, stiff at first, letting him dictate. The crowd chuckled as her foot caught slightly on the turn. "Predictable," someone whispered. Mrs. Devereux sipped her champagne with a satisfied smile. Sebastian spun her suddenly, faster than they'd practiced. She stumbled, just enough to draw a few cruel laughs. His mouth twitched upward, half in habit, half in self-defense. But then she caught his eyes, and something shifted. She inhaled slowly, her father's voice echoing in her mind. Breathe through the music. Don't chase it. Let it chase you. Her spine straightened. Her grip on his hand changed. Firmer, anchored. She stopped reacting and began dancing. Step, turn, glide. Her movements melted into the music, fluid and precise. She stopped trying to keep up with him and started leading within the follow. Her timing sharpened, her gaze steadied. The awkwardness fell away like a shed skin. Sebastian blinked. He tried another sharp pivot, expecting her to falter, but she matched it flawlessly. He tried to accelerate. She flowed beside him like water reshaping a stone's path. The laughter died down. A hush spread across the room. The orchestra swelled. The rhythm climbed, Amina's confidence blossomed visibly. Her steps painted arcs across the floor, the skirt of her gown swirling like ocean foam under moonlight. Her posture held the grace of a dancer who had once been someone, and tonight she was again. Sebastian felt it too. His smirk vanished, replaced by concentration. For the first time in his life, someone was meeting him step for step. His movements shifted. Less mockery, more challenge. His hand tightened around hers. Their eyes locked. It was no longer predator and prey. It was a duel. Gasps echoed as they moved into a daring series of turns. She dipped low, recovered effortlessly, spun into his arms without missing a beat. The crowd leaned in. Some guests even began to applaud mid-dance, caught up in the unexpected magic unfolding before them. Maria stood at the edge of the room, tears shining in her eyes. "That's my girl," she whispered. Even Sebastian's friends, who had conspired to humiliate her, watched in stunned silence. Sebastian leaned closer during a tight turn, his voice barely audible above the music. "You're incredible," he muttered, breathless. "Keep up," she shot back, eyes blazing. The orchestra reached its crescendo. Amina pivoted gracefully, pulling Sebastian into a synchronized flourish that ended with her extended backward, one hand arched above, his arm supporting her. The final note hung in the air. Silence, and then thunderous applause. The ballroom erupted. Guests leapt to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even whistling. The same people who had laughed minutes earlier now stared at Amina with something dangerously close to admiration. Sebastian pulled her upright. Their chests heaved, their eyes locked again. This time not as rivals, but as equals who had just created something undeniable. But at the head of the room, Mrs. Devereux did not clap. Her hands rested on the gilded arms of her chair, nails digging into the gold. Her face had gone pale, then hardened into something cold and calculating. This was not the spectacle she had planned. She leaned toward a nearby guard in a black suit, her voice a sharp whisper. "End this farce." The guard nodded subtly and disappeared into the shadows behind the curtains. On the floor, Amina felt the electricity of the moment. For the first time in years, she was not a maid serving champagne. She was a dancer, a force, but at the edge of the room, unseen, something dark was set in motion, and the night, which had begun with music, was about to turn. The applause was still echoing through the ballroom like rolling thunder when Mrs. Devereux's sharp clap sliced through it like a blade. The music stopped. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Every eye turned toward the matriarch, standing now, regal and radiant beneath the chandeliers. "Well," she purred, stepping forward slowly, her gown whispering against the marble. "It seems our little maid can dance after all." Amina stood at the center of the floor, breathless, chest rising and falling. She held her chin high, refusing to shrink under that gaze. Mrs. Devereux's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "But a single waltz," she continued, "does not make one a dancer, nor a match for my son." A few guests chuckled uncertainly. Others leaned in, sensing something deliciously cruel about to unfold. "I believe," Mrs. Devereux said, projecting her voice like a queen delivering judgment, that if she is truly worthy, she should face a real challenge. She turned dramatically to the orchestra. "Maestro, the Viennese!" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The Viennese waltz was notorious. Lightning-fast turns, relentless tempo, a test even for professionals. This wasn't a dance, it was a battlefield. Behind the curtain near the stage, Mrs. Devereux swept into the shadows like a general entering her war room. Her most trusted guard followed. She spoke in a low, precise tone. "She humiliated me in front of everyone. Make sure she doesn't finish the second dance standing." The guard nodded once, then disappeared among the hired dancers. On the dance floor, Sebastian stepped closer to his mother, keeping his voice low. "Mother, this is ridiculous. She's not trained for Viennese anymore. You're setting her up." "I am setting her up," Mrs. Devereux hissed through her teeth, her perfect smile plastered on for the crowd. "And you will do your part, or I will find another heir more deserving of the Devereux legacy." Sebastian stiffened. "You wouldn't." "Try me," she whispered. "Dance, Sebastian. Show them who truly belongs in this world." Her hand tightened briefly on his arm, then she turned back toward the crowd. Mask of charm restored. Sebastian crossed the floor toward Amina. She noticed the tension in his jaw, the storm behind his usual cocky grin. "They want to break you," he muttered, barely audible. "I know," she whispered back. Then, "Don't let them." Their eyes locked, for the first time, not as rivals or reluctant partners, but as two people facing the same enemy. A silent pact passed between them in that breath. The orchestra struck the first notes, rapid, spiraling, like a heartbeat sprinting downhill. Sebastian took her hand. "Ready?" She exhaled through her nose, steady and strong. "Let's give them something to choke on." They launched into the Viennese. The tempo was brutal. Spins blurred into spins. Amina felt the sudden force brush her side, her balance tipping violently mid-spin. Her vision tilted. Chandeliers, faces, ceiling, floor, spinning together in a dizzy blur. Gasps exploded across the ballroom as her body pitched forward. The music thundered on, and in that suspended heartbeat, she was caught between glory and humiliation, between triumph and collapse. The cliff's edge loomed. Would she fall or fight? Time slowed. The world around Amina blurred into a swirl of chandeliers, gasping faces, and thundering violins. She felt the shove at her side like a flash of lightning. Sudden, sharp, designed to end her. Her body tilted forward, gravity pulling her toward disaster. But instinct, the dancer's instinct, surged up before panic could take hold. Her heels scraped the marble floor in a controlled slide. Her back arched gracefully, arms extending like wings. In that suspended second, she made a choice. She would not fall. She would fly. With a breathtaking twist, Amina converted her stumble into a sweeping, dramatic flourish. A low, spiraling dip that looked intentional, almost choreographed. The hem of her gown flared like a blooming rose. Her fingertips grazed the floor before she sprang back upright, catching Sebastian's stunned gaze as she did. The ballroom erupted. Gasps became wild applause. Someone shouted, "She saved it!" Another cried, "Brilliant!" Sebastian's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Follow me," she breathed. She seized the lead. Her hand tightened around his, not with hesitation but authority. Her movements sharpened. No longer cautious, no longer reactive. She spun into the rhythm like a flame catching wind, precise and radiant. Sebastian hesitated for only a heartbeat before falling into sync. She led with a confidence he had never seen from her before, commanding the floor with effortless grace. The sabotage had awakened something, buried deep inside her. The orchestra's tempo accelerated. She met it head-on. Her feet traced perfect arcs over the marble. Her body became an instrument of the music, interpreting every rise and fall, every sharp turn, every lingering note. It wasn't just a performance. It was a declaration. For years, she had hidden behind trays and aprons. For years, she had silenced the dancer inside her to feed her siblings and survive. But now, under the golden lights of the Devereux ballroom, that dancer returned. Flashbacks flickered through her mind like flashes of sunlight through trees. Her father's proud smile, the way he'd lift her after competitions, his voice whispering from the edge of the stage, "Dance like you're free, Amina." Tears glimmered at the corners of her eyes. Not of pain, but of release. She was free. The planted dancer, realizing his sabotage had failed spectacularly, tried to approach again. But before he could, Amina executed a dazzling double spin, drawing Sebastian with her, their momentum sweeping them across the floor and forcing the saboteur to retreat awkwardly. The crowd caught it. A chorus of boos rained down on the man. Whispers spread like wildfire. She saved herself. Did you see that? She's better than the professionals. Even the harshest critics stood speechless, captivated by her command of the floor. Sebastian's usual cocky composure melted into open awe. "You're incredible," he muttered under his breath as they wove through a complex Viennese pattern. "This," Amina whispered, eyes blazing, "is who I am." Every movement now was deliberate, powerful, and beautiful. She balanced strength and grace like a seasoned champion. Because she was one. Years of buried skill surged through her muscles, guided by instinct and memory. Sebastian adapted to her every lead, their chemistry transforming from reluctant partners to perfect harmony. The ballroom's energy shifted entirely. No longer was she a maid awkwardly keeping up. She was the star, the center of gravity. The crowd leaned forward, as if witnessing history. The music soared toward its climax. Amina launched into a breathtaking sequence. A bold promenade, flawless pivots, then a perfectly timed overhead turn that left the crowd gasping. She ended with a regal pose, head high, chest lifted, every inch radiating triumph. The room erupted, not polite applause, not mocking cheers, roars, genuine, thunderous, electric. People were on their feet. Some clapped wildly, others simply stared, mouths open. The elite who had mocked her now looked upon her as if seeing her for the first time. Maria, watching from the side, clutched her hands to her chest, tears running freely down her face. "That's my girl," she whispered again. Voice breaking, even Sebastian's friends, the ones who had snipped her dress, laughed at her, treated her as entertainment, found themselves cheering, swept up in the spectacle they never saw coming. But at the head of the ballroom, Mrs. Devereux was not clapping. She was shaking. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped the microphone stand. Her carefully painted smile had cracked, revealing fury beneath. This was not her narrative. This was not the humiliation she orchestrated. Amina wasn't supposed to rise. She was supposed to break. The final note of the music echoed like a bell. Amina and Sebastian stood at the center, framed by the light, breathing hard, faces flushed with victory. Before the applause could crest into celebration, a sudden feedback screech pierced the room. Mrs. Devereux stormed onto the dance floor, heels striking the marble like gunshots. She snatched the microphone from its stand. "This ends now!" she thundered, voice twisted with rage, echoing across the stunned ballroom. The applause faltered. The room tensed. Amina stood still, gown swirling softly around her ankles, eyes locked on the furious matriarch. The dance was over, but the real battle had just begun. The ballroom held its breath. Golden light still shimmered over the marble floor, where Amina stood, gown slightly torn, chest rising with each deep breath, face glowing from the dance of her life. Across from her, Mrs. Devereux gripped the microphone like a sword, eyes blazing. The crowd was caught between two forces, the furious matriarch who ruled this world, and the maid who had just danced like a queen. Sebastian moved first. He stepped forward, positioning himself squarely between Amina and his mother. His jaw was tight, his usual playful smirk gone. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the microphone's echo. "No, Mother." The world saw her. "She won!" Gasps rippled through the audience. No one had ever heard him speak to Mrs. Devereux like that. Not in public. Her nostrils flared, but he didn't back down. A single clap echoed. Then another. Then, like a wave rolling through the crowd, guests began to clap in rhythm. It started hesitantly, then grew bolder. A slow, steady beat filled the ballroom. Nobles, critics, dancers, even waiters joining in. Their applause wasn't for Mrs. Devereux, it was for Amina. Mrs. Devereux tried to seize control. She raised her hand for silence and sneered, "Enough of this spectacle. She's a servant playing dress-up. This is a charity gala, not a street show. Let's not confuse a trick with—" "Stop!" Sebastian's voice cut through hers, sharper than a blade. He turned, facing her fully. "For once in your life, look at what's right in front of you," he said. "She didn't trick anyone. She earned every cheer in this room. She outdanced your professionals. She outshone your guests. And she did it with grace." Mrs. Devereux's lips tightened. "You're humiliating this family." "No," he replied, calm but firm. "You did that when you tried to destroy someone better than you." A collective murmur swept through the crowd. Shock, admiration, disbelief. The kingdom of Devereux had never been challenged so openly, and certainly not by its heir. Amina stepped forward. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice did not. She didn't snatch the microphone. She didn't yell. She simply stood tall, gown glimmering under the lights, and spoke clearly for all to hear. "I didn't grow up with chandeliers," she began. "I didn't inherit titles or ballrooms, but I learned something more powerful than money. I learned how to stand when people try to make you fall." The room was silent, but
Even
high
the
above,
orchestra had gone
on the balcony
still.
of the
I
Devereux
mopped these
estate,
floors.
Mrs.
I served your
Devereux
drinks.
stood alone,
And tonight,
hands
I danced
gripping
on
the
this
railing.
stage.
Her
Not because
empire
I
had
wanted
taken
to
a
be
blow
you,
tonight,
but because I
below,
wanted to be me.
Cheers echoed
Grace
from
isn't
Amina's
inherited,
new school,
she said,
carried
eyes
on the night
knocking
air.
on Mrs. Devereux's
The matriarch's
steady and
eyes
unwavering.
narrowed.
It's earned.
She wasn't done.
Her words struck like
Defeated.
thunder.
Yes.
The crowd
Plotting.
exploded.
Always plotting.
Applause thundered
The last
louder
step
than the
had been
music
taken.
ever had.
But the next
Some
dance
guests
was
rose to
just
their feet
beginning.
again, stamping in